Hey guys, it's Maddie and welcome back to my channel. You're an OG if you remember me doing that in my videos. That was a very long time ago, but I feel very nostalgic today. And as you can see from the title of this video, today I'm going to be doing a Q&A for my gap year. For context, I went into kind of like a forced gap year because I had to be in the country for 3 years to get home fees for university. Otherwise I'll be paying international fees, which is like triple, quadruple the amount depending on the uni. So I kind of got forced into a gap year because I was in the UK for under 3 years at that point. It was only our 3-year anniversary in July this year, so I had to take the little gap year and I decided to go on some little solo trips. Initially I didn't want to do the gap year at all, so I didn't have like some elaborate plan for solo trips. I kind of just like worked and did the solo trips at the same time, if that makes sense. It first started with me going to see my friend in Germany. I flew to Europe for the first time by myself. It was my first time going into Europe, and then I was kind of like, oh wait, I can actually do this by myself, that's crazy. So then I proceeded to go to Paris, and then I also went to Thailand with my family. That wasn't a solo trip, but I did just travel up there. Amsterdam, Italy, but in Italy I traveled around a bit. I went to Rome, Pisa and Florence, Barcelona, and then also Scotland, again with my family. I went to 7 countries on my gap year, but technically only 5 of them, maybe 4 were actually solo travel, depending, because like I kind of count the Germany one as solo travel because like I said, I flew by myself for the first time and I saw my friend, but it was like, it was traveling for me, it wasn't traveling for her because she lives there. Does that make sense? And yeah, I just wanted to have a little Q&A for you guys for some realistic solo travel and gap year content, because it's not like I went backpacking or interrailing, stuff like that. It was just a very realistic working while traveling, little short trips here and there vibe. So hopefully I answered some of your questions. I asked you guys on Instagram and TikTok. These are my handles if you want to go follow me there and be involved in some future videos. So I have, what did you do for work and how many hours of work did you do a week? So basically, I'm very grateful that in the UK you can basically get like standard retail jobs at like 16 and they hire you very well. I know in South Africa a lot of my friends battle to get like jobs. They have to go into like waitressing or like bartender stuff or like nightclubs because the like job like market in South Africa is much harder to get into. So I was very lucky. I had like some prior experience in South Africa, so coming over here I got hired by initially Superdrug. Well, I worked for my godmom for a bit, for like a few months, but that wasn't like a proper company, if that makes sense. The first like proper company was Superdrug, and I've been with them for 2.5 years going on. I did want to transfer when going to uni, but unfortunately I can't, and I did reveal that I was a Superdrug baddie in my other room vlog video, so I feel comfortable saying that it was Superdrug for 2.5 years. And then I also in my gap year picked up Primark. I started working there in July and I left also like mid-time, around just before a year that I was working there. So yeah, in my gap year I did Primark and Superdrug. How I balanced that was that Primark was a 10-hour contract, 5 hours on a Sunday, 5 hours on a Tuesday. So I just asked Superdrug to not put me down for those days because Primark was kind of different, that you had like your allocated days and you will work those days, and if you need them off, like you will have to use leave. Whereas Superdrug is much more lenient, where it's like I just have to work 8 hours in my contract. That was my contract, which was 8 hours, but I went way over that with my overtime, which I'm very grateful for. But I could say like, can I not be put down on the Monday, and they like wouldn't put me down. So it was much nicer to like work around the traveling with that, because obviously I worked the Tuesday and the Sunday, so often for my little short trips I would go the Wednesday to the Saturday, work the Monday, do my Tuesday shift, go away from Wednesday to Saturday, and then come back and do my Sunday shift. So I was very grateful for like the hours that I got and the days that I got. But often like when I wasn't traveling, was just put down for a lot of hours honestly at Superdrug. It's not that I like asked for a lot of overtime, I just naturally got to put down. Also because I'd been there for so long, I think I was seen as like a valued employee, if that makes sense, that like they know they can trust me, so they put me down for a lot of hours. I would work, even when I was like sixth form, I worked a lot of weekends and stuff like that. If I'm being so honest guys, please save in your gap year, because I very much decided to have too much fun in my gap year. I have like no savings to fall back on, but I honestly don't regret that at all, because I have the work experience. Hopefully I can get a nice job in uni, we can hope and pray, and I've had all these nice little experiences. So it's nice to have fun on your gap year, but definitely do be a little bit more responsible than me. But yeah, for context, my Superdrug contract was 8 hours, Primark was 10, but I worked a lot more over Superdrug, especially I think from like December until probably May. I worked a lot overtime. It did start to burn me out a lot, if I'm being so honest. I was working like for weeks straight, like a week, and then I would have like a day off and I would go again for like 5 days, because obviously in Superdrug's eyes, like they were giving me 2 days off, but the 2 days off were my work days for Primark. So it was a little bit stressful and overwhelming, but the paycheck was fat, so that was good. So yeah, the hours kind of varied. It was definitely 10 hours for Primark and then Superdrug. Some days or some weeks I would do like 30 hours when I was working like a lot, so then I was basically working like a full-time job, like 40 hours a week, but it was spread over the 7 days, if that makes sense. Or on average I would say it was around like 20, just under 20 to around 25, 26 was my average for Superdrug, and then I still had the Primark on top of that, so probably around 30 plus hours a week I was doing, which like sounds like a lot, but to be honest, I'm like, you're not traveling or doing anything, like you definitely can do 30 hours a week. It's not that bad. It was a lot, but it wasn't that bad. What is your preferred travel method when solo traveling? I don't know what this like refers to exactly. I don't know if they mean like by plane, boat, whatever. I took the Eurostar to Paris, which I actually really enjoyed, because obviously it's not like you're in a tunnel and there's like fish around you, but it was so cool to like see the train and go by fast and see like the countryside of like France and stuff like that. And that was just a really great experience. I was able to sleep on the train. It was really comfortable. You were able to bring like much more luggage than you were if you were going on a plane, and it worked out cheaper, I think, or like around the same price. So I really enjoyed going on the Eurostar, but most of it was just on plane. But I think if you live somewhat close to like London or a place where the Eurostar is, the train isn't that much longer than the flight, I think it's worth doing it. At least going to Paris on the Eurostar, I really enjoyed that. How do you plan your trips? For example, savings, calculating costs, safety and accommodations, etc. This is the thing, Paris was like my baby. I loved Paris so much, so when I knew I was going there and it was my first ever solo trip, I like planned it to the minute. I literally made, how I kind of do it is I think of stuff that I see on TikTok or that I know personally. Like obviously growing up loving Paris, I had so many things I wanted to cover. I jot them all down and then I kind of look at them on the map to see like where they are, because obviously I don't want to spend money like going backwards and forth with public transport if I can just do stuff like all in the same area. So like the one day I would do stuff all in the same area, then the next day I would do something like a little bit further out. Obviously you're still traveling a bit, and I usually just get like, I researched the public transport before going. So like Paris, you were able to get like a day pass for the underground, like the Navigo card I think it's called. So I kind of just googled and got like a day pass or a 10-ticket trip or something like that, depending on the public transport. Definitely Google the public transport before you go, because a lot of them are somewhat different, and also like you don't want to get fined. That was a big thing with me. I was so scared of getting fined, and I didn't get fined, so I'm very grateful. But definitely I think being an anxiety girly, I just overthinked a lot. But as for like the itinerary planning and stuff like that, literally just map down everything that you want, look for recommendations for food, anything on TikTok and stuff like that. Or even, I know we don't like AI, but it really helps even putting it as a ChatGPT, saying like you're on a budget, you want this type of food, where can I go? I found a recommendation through ChatGPT of this restaurant in Paris. It was a very packed restaurant. I had to share a table with people, which is insane, but it was really good cheap food and I did really like it. So I think definitely utilize what you can. Then either make your own itinerary or just, like I say, throw it into ChatGPT and say, this is my itinerary, this is the time that I land or my like train arrives, this is where my accommodation is, can you tell me which rail card or what type of transport pass do I need, and can you plan out the day so I'm not traveling too backwards and forth. And then I always pre-book any activities. So when I went to the Eiffel Tower, pre-book that. When I went to the catacombs, pre-book that, because a lot of it is like a few weeks in advance that they release the tickets and they sell out really fast. It was really hard to get tickets for the Colosseum. I eventually had to go buy resale tickets on Get Your Guide or something like that, which is a little bit more costly, but it definitely was worth it. So literally just be an overthinker and triple, quadruple prepare, in my opinion. I'd rather be too prepared than underprepared. But that's like the general gist of how I organized it. As for accommodation and safety, I think just living in South Africa, I'm naturally very vigilant. I can pick up when people are trying to scam you or like con you out of you and stuff like that. A big tip that I always used to do is, I was so scared of my phone being stolen, because if my phone gets lost, like that is it. I always printed out my tickets, like I printed out my flight tickets and any of like my activities, so if my phone like wasn't working, I could use those. But like just the whole thing of navigation, like your phone is your like sacred item there, so be so careful with it. I think just being vigilant in South Africa, I was able to like be hyper aware. But a big thing is, if you're checking your phone or whatever, get a little like safety harness or like one of these and literally just like strap it into there, because people will see that you have those, they'll be less likely to come up to you. And also if you're like checking your phone for something, I always like went against a corner, or if there was a wall, I wasn't like putting my back against the wall looking at my phone, I would always like face the wall, so it's like the wall, my phone, me. Just stuff like that. I think naturally I just had the sense of being very safe. I mean, you can't always be perfect, and some things, like maybe I just got really lucky and we're in like decent situations, but I think it's just being hyper vigilant. Calculating costs, like I said, I kind of was bad with my money. But I'm like, if I'm going to the country, like I am on a budget in terms of like food and accommodation wise, but if I want to do this activity, I might as well pay like the full price to do it and do it properly, so that like, because I don't know when I'm going to come back. Do you know what I mean? Not really that helpful, like I said, with budgeting. I think just because I worked so much, I could afford to definitely do it, but you don't have to travel super expensive. Also, I'm very high maintenance, so I like had to have a carry-on every time I traveled or took like a plane. You do not need that. If you're going for only like 2-3 days like I did, you could easily just use like the normal travel backpack limit, if that makes sense. I just, like I said, I'm very high maintenance, especially if you're a man. Like you literally just need to bring like t-shirts and shorts and that's it, and you can easily use your backpack, which saves you a lot of money on like costs of the plane. And then accommodation, if you want to stay in hostels, that's also quite good. I stayed in a hostel in Amsterdam and it really wasn't that bad. Like it did save me a lot of money, so I would do it again. It's just, I do prefer my space. If I could find an Airbnb for slightly more but I get like my own space, I would obviously like rather use that than a hostel. So I think it's just gauging where you are in the country and what your preferences are. You can definitely travel very, very low budget. I was of the impression of like, if I'm going to the country, I might as well enjoy myself and not be too stingy. Does that make sense? What has been your favorite place? I think by the way that I keep on using it as an example, Paris. I grew up in the 2014 era of loving Paris. Absolutely loved it. I had so many Paris things, so that was like my childhood dream destination. So I definitely overhype it to myself because I loved it so much for my younger self. But objectively, I think Italy was like objectively the best trip that I've had, because I went to Florence and Pisa within it. I took the train up there, spent a day trip up there, and just Rome was so beautiful and it was so lovely, and the Colosseum was amazing. Like objectively, that was the best trip that I've had. I really loved my Rome trip, like more than I expected, which I'm so grateful for. It was also my longest trip. Rome, I stayed for 6 days. I think also because it was my first solo trip, it's just special. A lot of the questions are just like the how do you fund your traveling, and like I said, my parents didn't contribute at all towards it. Any activities that I did, any travel, like literally all came out of pocket. I don't think my parents contributed like a cent towards it. If they did, it would be like not even my food. I don't know. Every single thing I think I funded by myself, if I'm being so honest, and literally that is just through my saving up and jobs and stuff like that. Even if you do like little side hustles like selling stuff on Vinted, like you can easily save money from that. Any life skills you recommend working on a gap year, for example cooking, managing finances, etc.? Honestly, anything and everything. Even like small little hobbies I really picked up again, like my scrapbooking and my drawing and stuff like that. Any like proper life skills and also hobbies and little skills that you have so much time in the world. Like I am dreading not dreading, I'm really looking forward to going to university. Like I said, I was forced into this gap year, so I always knew I wanted to go back into education. I think it's gonna be quite a culture shock to me to go back in and be like so jam-packed busy and not be able to be like, I want to go on a random trip on a random Wednesday and come back on a Friday. Like I can't do that anymore when I'm at uni. So I think because you have so much time on your hands, literally anything and everything, cooking, managing finance, working, please for the love of God get a job, and please for the love of God maybe get 2 or 3 jobs. Like I said, you have so much time in the world, utilize it. Picking up any hobbies that you want to learn, or picking up any hobbies that you discarded previously due to like lack of time or interest. Like there's so many things that I wasn't into like a year ago, or even like Exhibit A, I didn't film for years because I was just like insecure about it and not into it. And as my gap year started, I picked up the camera again and I've been loving it over the past year. I know this said life skills, but any life skills and hobbies, utilize so much free time that you have on your hands in this year. Did you travel with any group travel organizations, or did you mostly do solo traveling? Or solo traveling or self-funded? I would have loved to, like I said, because I was kind of forced into the gap year, I didn't like plan it out. I would have loved to do interrailing and take like a big chunk of work off, because that's the thing, I also wanted to keep my jobs. So it was literally just like 5 days every like 2 months I would go away. Look who's decided to join me. Oh, that breath stank. And I know there's like organizations that do group activities. I haven't looked into them much, but I know they are quite good. They are just like quite expensive and you have to use a lump sum of money at a time, whereas like my type of solo traveling wasn't too expensive because it's short trips, like I said, every few months that you can like kind of save up towards. What type of person do you think would benefit from having a gap year? Literally anyone and everyone, I believe. Even like depending on your age, if you went to uni, take a gap year after school, your bachelor's degree, before you start working properly. I'm low-key debating doing it again. I was never the person to be like, oh my gosh, I want to travel when I'm older, but once I've started traveling, I get it, you know what I mean? And I really would recommend it to anyone, any stage of life, any walk of life. Just obviously make sure that you're able to keep yourself safe and vigilant. I wouldn't go solo traveling if I was like 60 and had a broken hip, you know, within reason. What are the cons of a gap year? That is a very good question. Cons of a gap year, I think, especially for me, is kind of being behind, or that feeling of being behind in life, which I think is so stupid. Very long story short, basically the academic years are different in South Africa, where we go from January to December, whereas here it's September to like June, July. I took like a mini gap year before I started sixth form, where I wasn't working, I wasn't in school. I started school and then I left in February, and I only went back in September with my cohort. So I was a year older than my cohort because of like the ways that the years worked, and it was just weird. And I thought to myself, I'd rather like do it properly with everyone than have to like go into my proper year but then have to like learn a year's worth of content by myself. Like I wasn't gonna do that. So I was already a year behind, and I was made to feel like I was freaking ancient. I hated it. I had such like anxiety, like insecurity complex about it. And it wasn't people being straight up mean, but it would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're turning 18. Oh my gosh, isn't it so weird that you're older than us? Oh my gosh, I forget that you're born at this time. And it's like my cohort was September 2005 to like June, July 2006. I'm born in February 2005. I'm only like 6-7 months older than these people, and they made me feel like I was freaking ancient. Whereas I feel like university, people just don't care. Obviously I haven't been yet, but I know like from hearing people's experiences and my friends, and even being in a university like fresher group chats, there's people who are like 24, 26, and like no one really cares. They'll ask like, oh, why? Like, why are you older? You can explain your story, and you know what, it gives you some character development, it gives you some lore. I think that's the mindset to have into it. I think that was the biggest like con that I experienced during my gap year, of that FOMO and feeling like you're left behind, especially because of like the way that my immigration years worked out. Like, and technically my cohorts in South Africa, I was a year younger than, if that makes sense. So I was 2005, I was with a bunch of 2004 kids, and my cohort now in South Africa would be finishing their bachelor's degree in December this year. Yeah, in a way you kind of do feel behind in a sense, but it's really not that big of a deal. You have your whole life. I think education, having an age, is really stupid. Obviously, like once you're out of A levels and GCSEs, like yeah, there's kind of like an inherent age towards it, but like university and stuff like that, I think also because you don't pay for schooling in the UK until like a certain age. Like I didn't have to pay for schooling and I was a year older. Obviously you have to pay for university. It's not as easy access, and it is very much a privilege to go to uni. So I think people care less when you go, because not everyone can afford to go in the first place. So it's not really people's place to be like, well, why didn't you go freshly 18? It's like, okay, did you want to pay for my education and my schooling? Do you want to pay the international fees? No. So yeah, I think the cons are definitely subjective, but that's the most overarching comment that I definitely hear from people when I say that I've been on a gap year, or they're debating going into one, if that makes sense. Was the gap year worth it? Straight to the point, simple answer, yeah. Again, as I've said multiple times, I was forced into this. It wasn't by choice. I really didn't want to do it. I had many sleepless nights and crying sessions over being forced into a gap year. But honestly, it's been one of the best years of my life. I know the next few months is going to be quite difficult going into uni and just obviously moving house, and there's a lot of other stuff happening, but I think for the most part, the beginning portion of this year has been probably the best year of my life, which is, I don't want to put that out into the universe because I feel like I'm going to jinx it, but I think it definitely was worth it. Especially mine's quite a realistic gap year where I have traveled a bit, but for the most part I was literally just working and at home and doing little side hobbies and skills and stuff like that. It was a very chill gap year. I wasn't traveling around Asia for 6 months straight, you know. Where do you find the confidence to travel alone? I'm way too scared, to be honest. I was scared. Like I said, I never really had that aspiration to travel, and then when I went to go visit my friend, I was like, wait, this is kind of cool, seeing a different country and culture, and I can do this myself. That's crazy. So obviously then I planned my Paris trip, and I think, like I said, because Paris was such a dream destination of mine, it just blew my expectations, and I was so happy with it that I just continued to carry on. And I was like, you know what, why not try travel while I'm on my gap year. Obviously some trips were better than the others. Barcelona, it was nice to see, but it wasn't my favorite trip at all. So I think it's just nice to experience the different cultures. As for confidence, I remember when I first arrived at the train station in Paris and I started walking towards the metro station, my anxiety started going and my heart started beating and I was getting really scared. And I literally, in my head, I think this will be a core memory for me for the rest of my life, I literally, as I was walking towards it, told myself, Maddie, what are you worried about? So many people solo travel, no one cares. Genuinely, in the most polite way possible, no one gives a damn that you're solo traveling. No one gives a damn that you're by yourself. So many people do it and the people there are here to help. If they can't, you literally have Google Translate. I think it is just a sense of, if you don't go out of your comfort zone, you're just going to be stuck in the same place for years to come. I think you do have to go out of your comfort zone and put yourself in those uncomfortable situations to make yourself comfortable, if that makes sense. And that's just a core memory of mine. I think after that, I wasn't scared at all for any of the public transport. Even though you're by yourself, you're not necessarily alone. I think also staying in Airbnbs, I didn't really make friends, obviously solo traveling, but if you were to go to hostels, they have support groups there. With so many other people solo travel, you can make friends, you can do stuff together. I think you do have a little bit of a community that you can build. Do you think you're ready to get back into the books and learning? I feel like I'd get into a slump. I guess we'll have to see. I can't lie, I am a bit worried about that, but like I said, I always wanted to know. I knew I wanted to go into education, and it wasn't a matter of fact of, even growing up, I knew people were like, I wouldn't do a gap year because I know I wouldn't go back to uni. I applied with my cohorts and just deferred, so I didn't have that sense of, oh, do I actually want to go to university? Because I know I did, and I was already applied, I was already enrolled, I already got the exception from the uni. So definitely if you want to do a gap year, I would say apply with your cohorts and defer, because if you end up saying later in your gap year, actually I don't want to do this anymore, you can withdraw your application. It's much easier to do that than try to do your whole application yourself and do it, sort it out yourself, you know what I mean? And at least you have that's like, I'm gonna have fun on this gap year, but I'm going back to uni. Do you know what I mean? As for actually getting back into the books, I guess we'll see when I arrive. I think it will be a little struggle for me. I think just it is general knowledge, it will come back to me and I will remember, but I think just, especially I'm doing psychology, which is labeled as a Bachelor of Science degree in the UK, so it being very STEM related, I am a little bit worried. But I think I do obviously have that base knowledge and they're just going to build upon that. And I think just at least for the next few months, I'm just going to have to put in a little bit extra work. But I think I'll be fine overall, if I'm being honest. We can hope and pray that I'm okay. What do you like more when traveling? Sightseeing / famous sites, or experiencing the culture? Sightseeing and famous sites, I must say. I think a lot of the time I see the culture, but I don't fully immerse myself in it because I don't want to do, for example, food is such a big part of culture, but I often don't go out to proper restaurants. Italy, I'll go have a pizza, but it might not be by the most authentic Italian proper pizzeria place. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm obviously traveling on a budget, and I feel like, especially with food, I don't feel like spending strong prices if it's just myself. If I was with someone else, I'd be more willing to learn the culture and do stuff like that. And certain, I guess, activities you can't really do by yourself, or you can. I'm just thinking of the pasta making classes. I wouldn't want to do that by myself, so I definitely enjoy seeing more so the famous attractions, especially sharing that with my family and my friends. It's cool to have visual evidence and photographic evidence of going there and be able to look back on that. Whereas the culture, it depends on what you're doing with the culture, but I think also using Airbnb instead of hostels. I feel like hostels, they have activity groups and stuff like that to immerse yourself in the culture more or meet people from the culture, whereas with Airbnb you're kind of by yourself. But I enjoy it more so seeing the famous sites. What's the best thing you ate during your travels? Oh, again, we're going back to Paris. The first night that I arrived on my solo trip, I think it's also, again, just the experience of it all. First night that I arrived on my solo trip and I was walking to the Eiffel Tower, and I saw it in the distance, but I was purposely, I'm not gonna look at it, and I was so close to missing when the lights started to flicker after the hour strike that I started running towards it, and I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is in front of me. And then I was standing right at the base of the Eiffel Tower and I took pictures by it, and then I saw it flicker and it was just so big and beautiful, and it was just like a oh my gosh moment. And I have these, if you haven't heard me speak about it before, I have these waves of senses of emotions when I'm in different countries where I'm like, I can't believe that this is my life and I'm so grateful. I had it on the plane for my first flight off to Germany I had it somewhat by the Eiffel Tower, but also where the tunnel where Princess Diana was in her car accident. It's this tunnel, you can see the Eiffel Tower from it. I had it there. In Italy, I had it when I sent myself a postcard at the Vatican, which was a bit random. I didn't have it in Amsterdam, but I think because, like I said, I was in a different mind state there. Amsterdam was objectively very pretty, but I think I wasn't in the best mindset, and I was feeling the very heavy emphasis of solo and the solo travel on that trip. So I didn't have it much. I was obviously very grateful in certain moments, but I didn't have that overwhelming sense of emotion of I'm gonna cry and I can't help it. And Barcelona, I didn't have it either, which is very interesting. But I had this sense of emotion of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is here. And there was a crepe stand. It wasn't Sueur crepes, I promise, guys. If you don't know about Sueur crepes in Paris, just look it up. But it was a proper crepe stand, and I went and got a Nutella and banana crepe, and that was the best crepe I've ever had in my life. When a crepe's almost crispy on the outside but soft and gooey on the inside, and then they did not go sparingly with the Nutella. They put so much on. It was the best crepe hands down I've ever had, and especially just to have a crepe in Paris. I know it's very basic and not a very unique answer. You can have a crepe anywhere in the world, but I think it was just the location that made it. I'm having a crepe under the Eiffel Tower, and what about it? Anyways, that is it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry for the yap, but hopefully it helped someone. It was just interesting to listen to from my experiences of solo traveling, but more realistic. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment any other questions you have. I can answer the questions in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Happy solo traveling. Bye.